Some of Idaho's banking institutions decided that you don't get to spend your own money on things they don't agree with. Idaho Central Credit Union effectively said as much after controversy broke out last week over their ban on purchases for things like firearms and ammunition. These are staples in Idaho homes, and a ban disproportionately affects conservatives. Though ICCU retracted this policy, stating it was a mistake, it illustrates why Idahoans should be concerned about issues within the banking system at large. Bans on purchases like these coerce organizations and individuals into complying with the left's agenda. So on this week's episode of Fiscal Fridays, we highlight the issues within the American banking system and how Bitcoin could provide a much-needed alternative to this madness. So what exactly is going on with America's banking system? Idaho Central Credit Union made headlines last week for making a controversial update to their terms of service agreement for their online banking platform. Therein, they lobbed purchases of things like firearms and ammunition into the same list of, quote, materials that promote intolerance, violence, or hate within their policies. They also claim to not monitor or block users' transactions, but suspiciously still reserve the right to do so. ICCU retracted this language in favor of more general and broad terminology. They chalked up the issue to just being a misunderstanding of, quote, industry standard language. Of course, you and I know that it is ridiculous to suggest that guns and ammunition inherently promote hate and intolerance, but apparently the industry doesn't see it that way. ICCU is far from the only example of banks targeting conservatives. A practice known as debanking, that is, political and religious discrimination by financial institutions, is another industry standard practice these days. Wells Fargo is under investigation by the Montana Attorney General for debanking industries that don't comply with their environmental social governance, or better known as ESG, agenda. This affects industries ranging from energy to agriculture, industries that are critical to Idaho's economy. We see similar issues with Bank of America. They have been targeting non-green industries, religious groups, and conservatives for some time now. They even banned lending to firearms manufacturers. It is important to remember that banks are not normal businesses. If they were, you could make the argument that they are private businesses like any other, with the right to decide who they do business with. But the reality is that the banks are co-opted by the federal government through regulation. Bureaucrats in D.C. can peer into your financial records without a warrant. Banks leverage federal regulations to coerce conservative groups into revealing their supporters, a privacy issue, and they exclude those from the system who don't fall in line with the approved narrative. In essence, banks today have similar powers to those feared with the implementation of a central bank digital currency, barring some degree of precision and control. The real power of the banking system is through gatekeeping the financial system. Without a bank, it is extremely challenging to navigate the modern economy, particularly if you're an organization or business. This fact is how banks coerce Americans into compliance with the left's agenda. With debanking practices in full force, it is clear the system has abandoned freedom-loving conservative Americans. The answer to these problems is to defend market-based alternatives to banking. Anytime you entrust a third-party broker to your financial interactions, you give up some degree of liberty, privacy, and control over those transactions. This is the issue technologies like Bitcoin were invented to correct. Bitcoin is a trustless system that removes the need for a neutral third party to broker transactions, a truly free market-oriented solution to banking. This is just what conservatives have been waiting for. It is critical for states like Idaho to include fundamental rights to mine, own, and transact using Bitcoin or other digital assets. We see this philosophy gaining momentum in the state and national levels too. Other states have already implemented this policy. The Republican National Committee considered pro-Bitcoin language in their party platform this year. Prominent politicians expressed their support, and even the Idaho Republican Party adopted these tenets. With similar legislation narrowly failing in the House and the Senate last year, the gem state is ripe for a second push to successfully implement this sound money policy. The ICCU controversy is a microcosm of the larger issues we see in modern American banking. This should be a wake-up call to Idahoans who may have once believed that smaller, local banks were immune from the left's coercive tactics. It is time we work to protect the market's solution to the debanking issue. It will finally allow consumers to escape the very system that opted to leave them behind. Thank you for taking the time to watch this week's episode of Fiscal Fridays. To continue to support the Idaho Freedom Foundation's message of liberty, please be sure to like, subscribe, and spread the word. To get all the latest updates about IFF's sound money policy agenda, please visit idahofreedom.org/soundmoney2024.